What's up, and welcome back to Opposites Attract Podcast. This is Sonja Ramirez, your girl, and I'm sitting next to
Miguel Ramirez.
What's up, everybody? How is your day?
How was your week?
How is your life?
Going.
Woo!
I'm not doing it this time.
It's a new week.
It is a new week.
It's a new day.
It is a new day.
And it's sunny outside.
It isn't. It's getting nice out here.
It's a beautiful Arizona day. Yes, it is.
Dude, I'm getting stuffy, and I hope you don't have to take over this podcast like a couple weeks ago when I could barely talk.
Oh, that's okay. I'll do it.
I know you will.
I will run my mouth for an hour. You know that.
Yup. I mean, yeah. No, you're good.
Oh, okay. You didn't catch it. Okay.
Run your
Anyways.
mouth? Whatever, babe.
So we have our Michaela over.
Yeah, we were talking about it last week on the last episode that we were going to go pick her up, and we picked her up. Man, dude, I messed up.
What?
I went to go pick her up twice. Well, the first thing is I looked at my email, and it's like, oh, she lands at 6 something.
Uh-huh.
And I took off. And then when I was getting there, I was like, let me see exactly what time, because I knew it was like 6:55.
Miguel picked her up too early.
Turns out her flight was landing in Chicago at 6:55.
Yeah.
So I ended up turning around and coming back. And then her flight got delayed. Then I went to the airport, and it was delayed for like 2 more hours. And at that point, it's like, well, I'm not going to drive all the way back home to drive all the way back to the airport.
Yep.
So it was like midnight.
Yeah.
Dude, I slept in a fucking parking lot till 2:30 in the morning.
What a trooper. What a trooper. And then the following day, so you didn't get back home until
That's
like 3:34. And then the following day, we decided to take the kids to the Petrified Forest.
And Canyon de Chelly.
Yes. And so, dude, you're a trooper because you
Yeah.
were up. I think you got like, what, an hour, 2 hours sleep?
Maybe that. I probably got 2 little half hours.
And then drove 5 miles. And you were cool for the rest of the day.
So listen to this, though. Listen, Linda.
Listen.
So yeah, so that happened. I had to go. I was out till, I don't think I got home till like 3.
That's what I said.
3 or 3:30, something like that, right? But because we were leaving, and we were leaving on Sunday, which is usually the day that I wrap up my editing, and the podcast comes out. And because we were leaving and I wasn't going to be here, like I had to get all that stuff done beforehand. And we recorded on Saturday. So when I got back at like 3 in the morning, I was like, you know what? I can already see I'm not going to have time. So I started editing when I got back at 3, 4 in the morning.
Yeah.
And finished it up, and then we took off.
Yep. That's
and then we had a 5-hour drive up to Canyon de Chelly.
Yeah. But it was amazing.
Yeah, for those of you that are out here in Arizona, definitely Canyon de Chelly was really cool to check out. It's like up in the northeast part of Arizona, and it's these huge canyons that you can get with the native people. You can get a tour down at the bottom of the canyon, and you see like where people used to live in the mountain, like literally in the side of the mountain. Like there would be a crevice in the mountain, and inside there they built houses.
Yes.
And then just all the different way that they lived out there. And it was just crazy. It was really cool to see.
Yes. And the kids really, really enjoyed it. And we were able to just spend that quality time with them. Joey was absolutely in heaven because this kid he loves nature. You know, he is just connected to nature, and anything that has to do with it, he enjoys it.
Yeah. At first, like he really loves geodes and crystals, and not I don't think he loves like crystals and stuff like because of the magic of them. Like it's interesting, like the way they form.
Yes.
You know, like how could things come together and make something like this?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And in the beginning, so we also, like we said, we went to the Petrified Forest, and in the beginning, he didn't seem like he was as excited about petrified wood because I don't think he understood what it was. But once he understood, and for those of you that don't know, like in Arizona, there's the Petrified Forest, and if you haven't been there, you should check it out. I mean, it's a beautiful place. It's crazy. It's just like it's almost like being on a different planet, like just the way it looks out there. You have the Badlands with the hills that are different colors. They're like purplish and bluish, and it's just a completely different environment. But the trees, what happens with these petrified trees is that they're trees that were around millions of years ago, and they got either like covered by ash from a volcano, and then they just get like, they don't really get a chance to decompose. So they get covered in stuff, and it kind of preserves them. And then little by little, like the ash has minerals and silica in it, and it starts to penetrate the wood, and the wood breaks down
Miguel's
eventually.
giving you guys a science.
Well, I'm just saying, like the wood breaks down eventually.
Yes.
But all the other minerals take the shape of the wood. So when you look at it, at this thing, it looks like wood, but it's heavy as a rock, solid as a rock.
Yes.
And once it's been out in the sun and the environment beats it up and stuff, it starts changing colors.
Yeah, it's
and
super
it turns like rainbow. There's you have the painted desert out there at the petrified forest, and you also have the rainbow desert, which is, and the crystal forest.
So come on, you're giving them all the details. Man, you're going to ruin it for those of them who are like, hey, I'm going to go.
No, but definitely Google petrified wood and check out what it's about, because it's super interesting, really cool.
So Miguel and I, on our, in our last podcast, we talked about some of our childhood, things that we went through as children.
Yeah.
And
how it affected us as adults. And
well, we're going to get into that even more so today.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that some people who have not processed or have not reflected, if you listen to the podcast, it's like, well, how did you do that? Like, what are some things that you had to go through? What are some things that you did? Like, did you go see a therapist? Did you go see a counselor? Like, how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah.
And, so we're going to explain how our past traumas affected us as adults and how it affected our relationship. And then things that we did in order to heal. And healing is an ongoing process, because it's like you heal from one situation or one traumatic experience. And the way I picture it is like, it's like an onion.
Yeah.
You start peeling back the layers, and the more you peel back, the more it hurts, right? The more you cry.
Right.
And then once you get to the core, and that's exactly like what we've been doing, is just really focusing on things that we need to heal from.
Yeah. Yep.
And so in the podcast, you had mentioned some of your childhood trauma, having to, you grew up with your with your dad, and the abuse that you experienced, the being alone, going to sleep alone, the fear and all of that.
Yeah. That part of it, man, that's something I would have to think about. Like how being left alone. I don't know. Maybe
that's not something that you've processed yet.
Maybe not consciously, because I feel like maybe it hasn't affected that part, that experience, or that whatever that was. Like, it didn't affect me as much, because what would be, I don't know what the effects of it would be, because like for me, I just kind of look at our family and what we have, and it's like I did the complete opposite of it. So maybe that was the effect of it. Like we don't leave the kids alone. We make sure we don't leave one kid to take care of the other all the time. It might be like at the end of the day when we're going out for something, and we leave them all set up, ready to go. Like that's a normal thing. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right. Yeah.
It's not like, hey, I'm leaving for the entire day. You're going to be watching that, and you need to make lunch, you need to make dinner, you need to change and clean and all that kind of stuff. So maybe that was the effect of that.
Got it. But not having someone around.
Yeah.
When I was talking about my situation in my past, and I recognized that I had some abandonment issues.
Yeah.
With my dad not being around. And when I started going over some of the signs, which I'll share with you all, you stated that you could relate.
Yeah. Well, when you look at those abandonment signs, it's like, oh yeah, like I think kind of like you said, I've gone through, maybe not the same way you have, but I looked at the list of signs or things that you're going to have to deal with when you have abandonment issues.
Mm-hmm.
And I do see things that are that I can relate to, but not things really that I feel like are an issue that I have to deal with now.
Right.
You know, like that affect me today.
Yes.
It's something that I was like, wow, I felt that in the past.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I know it's, I know about that.
So this is not, an easy topic for us to openly share, but the reason why we're doing so in hopes that, if it's something that you've had to deal with.
Well, just like we said, when we see the list, it's like, wow, we've dealt with these things before. Like I have had these feelings of, bam, bam, like right down the list.
So I was doing some research on what are the signs of abandonment. And, the first sign was being eager to please.
Yeah.
And then the second is jealousy in your relationship or of others, trouble trusting your partner's intentions, feeling insecure about your relationship, having difficulty in feeling intimate emotionally, and needing to control or be controlled by your partner. And when I was reading these signs,
that one stuck out to me. Mm-hmm. Being in control or needing to be in control. And what was the one before that?
Having difficulty feeling intimate emotionally.
Yeah, I identified with those.
Right. So when I was reading these signs of abandonment, it was so odd because, as I mentioned in the previous podcast, because of what, living with a single mom who was emotionally broken and being a 9-year-old witnessing what my mom was going through.
Yeah.
And making the decision that, okay, well, if love equals hurt and marriage equals divorce, I don't want any of this. So what I did was I pretty much played safe so that
played safe by
I
what?
wouldn't feel
Played
allowing
safe.
Myself to love, to fall in love.
Yeah. To committing.
To give in,
committing.
To be so vulnerable to love someone.
Which keeps you from having a healthy relationship.
Right. So to feel jealousy, I don't know, because I never loved anyone enough to feel that.
Yeah.
Right? Trouble trusting, well, you love me
didn't really
more.
matter.
So if something happened, see
Whatever.
ya, I'm okay. Right? Like I built that
had
wall
1 foot out the
so
door.
high. There was, I didn't feel insecure because I was in charge. I was in control.
Right.
And so when it said, being in control, but what I recognized is that when you and I got together and, at the beginning, I didn't see you as a threat because I wasn't expecting anything. I was like, ooh, look at that smile. Give it to me. I'm like, ooh, that's not perv smile. That's not the smile I see. But I was like, ooh, cute boy toy.
Yeah.
Like I had no plans on marrying you. I had no plans on having children with you. Like I had no plans on falling in love with you. So you weren't a threat. So then it was almost as if it was easier to let you in. And then as time went on, when we got together and we were going through some really serious shit at the beginning of our relationship. And when that happened with my nieces and nephew.
Before we get into that, like, let me share kind of how when our relationship started. So I had been kicked out of the military. And so I went from having a stable, ready, like a regular income to no income at all and trying to figure out what the hell I'm going to do with my life. At the time, I was working a business that was barely getting off the ground and I was trying to get things going. And anybody that's been a business owner or, tried to do something for yourself, it's not easy. There's a lot of learning. There's a lot of stuff that you're going through. And that's what I was going through when we first met. And actually, when we first met, it was because of the business. Like we were trying, like I was trying to learn from you. It wasn't anything like trying to start a relationship.
Some of this.
Yeah, I was. No, in the beginning it wasn't.
No,
it had nothing to do with that. It was just trying to like learn from each other and trying to learn from, like what you were doing. But when we started having a relationship, I really didn't have much going on. Like I was trying to figure some things out. And we were saying, like, because of where you were mentally or the things that you had to deal with growing up, if I was in a different position, like if I was already having success in my life, in my career, if I had my own house, because I moved into your house, right? If I had my own house and the relationship started to get serious and you had to get rid of your house and move into my house or whatever, and like start combining stuff like that,
right.
It may not have happened because you would have been like, this shit's getting complicated. I'm out.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I think it was because I didn't have much going on. And it's like, well, you know, like you said, he's not a threat.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
But shortly after that, things happen. Like the thing when your sister passed away. And, you know, it was just like serious issues. Like your mom was living with us after we were married. And everything that we dealt with, it was always head on. And I think you kind of saw that I was down.
Yes. Yes. And what was...
And I think that made a difference.
No, yeah, 100%. Because too, you know, you are 6 years younger than I. Yeah. And, you know, that's not, for me, it was like, well, that was not something that was not normal for me. Yeah. But then when you showed up and you started showing out and you started stepping up. I mean, I remember specifically when it was time to get the kids, and we were both young, but you were younger than I, and you were ready to take on 3 teenagers that were not even yours. And there was no question. It was just like, let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go. That was my literal, let's get them.
That was my literal words. I remember that specifically. It was like, let's go.
And at that point in time,
kind of like the kids say right now, let's fucking go. Like that's what the kids say right now. Let's fucking go. Yeah.
And that's when I realized, like, you earned so much respect from me that it was easy to give into you, to love you, to fall in love with you. And not only that, but once we got the kids, things were tough. Yeah. Things were not easy. You know,
the hits kept on coming.
Yes, one after the other. And there were times where I felt weak. And when I was feeling at my lowest, I remember going to you and telling you, like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. And I remember you hugging me and telling me, like, we got this.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah. And that was another kind of moment where I knew that you were not just anybody. Like, you were somebody that I could see myself being with forever.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it took a few of those situations of us going through some really challenging times at the beginning of our relationship and just fighting and fighting and fighting and surviving and pushing through, because there was a point where we had all the kids and you were laid off, and there was so much going on within that time. Like, we were fighting for time with Michaela. You know, and that's another something that we're going to get into. But
dude, I went from building helicopters, I think, while we had the kids, to working at AutoZone.
Yeah.
Because I got laid off, and that was during the recession, or a little bit after the recession. I got laid off, and I couldn't find work. And at a certain point, it's like, I got to get to work. I got to do something.
Yeah. So
And not only that, but and it's not just one-sided, because, you're talking about how I was down to go pick up the kids, and then, I'm talking about having to go work at AutoZone, and yeah, that happened. But it wasn't just me, because you also went through some things and did some things that most people wouldn't have done. And I think that's what made the foundation so strong. I've made a clip about this in the past if you guys want to go check it out. But we're talking about it now. I mean, in the beginning, like, we went through some really hard things that really laid the foundation for our relationship. I mean, the stuff that I went through with my ex and the court fucking battle nightmare.
Right.
Like, that was 95%, 98% all you. Because you have the experience, and whether you had the experience or not, like, that's not something that most people would do. It's so much easier just to be like, you know what, man, this is fucking crazy. I'm out.
Yeah. And
I didn't sign up for this shit. But I could have said the same thing.
Right. No, yeah.
And that's what set us up for the future. That's why it's like, when something happens, we now know we're going to be all right. That's the effects of going through that hard shit. And that's the thing. When you go through shit like that, it really does make you stronger. If you look at it today.
And if you're in a relationship, to provide that confidence and security, and whatever happens, like, I got your back. It's very hard to find that.
Yeah.
So
one thing that I wanted to say real quick, sorry to cut you off, but like, you were saying that when times were tough, that there were times that I would tell you that we're going to be okay. And this is just something for, like, speaking of wives out there now and women. Sometimes men need to hear that too, because I don't think people understand the pressure that men feel sometimes. Everybody wants equality and everything to be the same, but it's not the same. It's not. It's just not. Things are different. And men sometimes feel the pressure of everything that's happening, but it's part of our job to keep it together, to not fucking flip out. But sometimes we need to hear that we're going to be okay too, because we get those feelings that shit's falling apart, that it's not going okay. And sometimes we need that. And I think I've told you that before. Like, I mean, I've told you, like, sometimes I'm just so stressed out. I'm like, who's telling me this? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think we've done that over the years. Like, we've got each other's back.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was a couple of podcasts ago, I was talking about how important it is, in our TikTok, how important it is to tell your man how much you appreciate them and how proud you are of them. And, I think, just because you're right, that's something that men don't hear a lot of, and us women don't express it as much.
I'm just saying, like, during hard situations, mm-hmm. because the stress that the wife is feeling, the husband's feeling too.
Right. They just don't express it the way the women do.
And if sometimes he's maybe losing it a little bit, that might be why.
Yeah. And
they may need, like, hey, I know fucking life is crazy right now, but we're going to be all right.
Right. And so, the 14 years that we've been together, 13 years that we've been together, at the beginning, we were so caught up in just surviving and fighting that we didn't have time to reflect.
Or to be down.
What do you mean? Oh, yes.
It reminds me of something that I heard. I can't remember where, but it's kind of like the suicide issue that we have here in the United States. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a lot of suicides are higher than they've ever been, and that sort of thing. But then you also have people on the other side of the world that are barely, like, they don't have clean water to drink. Like, they got to walk for miles just to get the things that they need. But they are fighting so hard to survive, mm-hmm. that suicide doesn't even cross their mind. That's not even a thought.
Right.
Because they're just fighting so hard to stay alive. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's kind of like what we were, like, we didn't have time to be down. We didn't have time. Like, it was like, it's time to fucking go figure, like, this is an issue. Let's get it. Let's conquer this. And the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. And then once you look back, it's like, holy shit.
Right.
Look at everything we've been through.
Yes. Because back then we weren't very mindful.
No.
Right?
But we took action.
There was no slowing down. It was all action, right? Yeah. Like, it was all actions, like action. Like, you know, even though like we were surviving, like we were fighting. There were times where you and I were not seeing eye to eye as well.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you were short-tempered.
Yeah.
You know, and I was throwing the divorce word at you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and we really did not talk about our past or things that we gone through as children. I mean,
that was recently.
Yes,
that was
processing our mindfulness, being aware, waking up, talking about, you know, what we went through. I mean, I just started remembering my past not that long ago.
Do you think some of this stuff came from the podcast? Because a lot of the mindfulness stuff has come after we started the pod. Like, we've been sitting here talking about stuff. Yeah. I don't know.
Not for me. For you, I have seen it 100%. Maybe. I have seen you wake up in the last 2 years more than ever. Like, to slow down, to pay attention to your thoughts, how you react. All of that, you're, you know, maybe, you know, but I have always focused on, right? Because I'm very spiritual. So I'm always searching and looking and questioning. So that has been a journey of mine. And so, but recently it was diving into my past because I got very curious. Like, why is it that I don't remember my childhood?
Yeah.
And then I met a really good friend. She's amazing, who was willing to mentor me and help me to remember my past. And she's a psychologist. And that's when things started to become apparent that, damn, I have daddy issues. But more so when you and I went through a situation where we both recognized each other's triggers and kind of started working on them together. Because I never felt like the signs of abandonment. I never felt those because I never allowed myself to fall in love.
You never put yourself in the situation where you could feel those.
Exactly. So then once you and I met and we started to grow together and we started to talk about some things.
Then some of the stuff started coming
you started traveling. Then the insecurity started to come up. I'm like, wait, what? You're leaving out of town for how long? And who are you going to be with? And
where are you going?
Even though I didn't express all this to you, I was feeling them. I was feeling sick to my stomach every time you left on vacation. And I'm like, what?
It wasn't vacation. It was fucking work.
It was work and vacation. No.
Fucking vacation. Every time I left, I'm
it's vacation away from the kids.
No. You fucking serious? Every time I would leave. That's fucked up. That's how, I bet you that's how most wives feel. He's fucking going on vacation.
Yeah, we do, because we're with the kids having to cook, clean, and do everything.
I mean, to be honest, it is a little vacation. I mean, I'm working, but you get to chill.
Babe, come on. Focus, man. Damn it. So anyways, when Miguel got this new position at work and he started leaving for 2 to 3 days, I was starting to feel a certain way, and jealousy, insecurities, a lack of confidence, like all of this. And I'm like, ew, like, what is this? Like, this is not me.
Yeah.
Like, this is not who I am.
Yep.
And I started to question it. But I also was acting on it. And I'll tell you, you know, when you had left for the first time. And I remember doing a video call.
Yeah.
And the video call was not, yeah, I wanted to see you, but it was more so who's in the room with you.
Yeah.
But I never told you that. These are the inner demons that I was dealing with. And I didn't understand why, because you haven't given me any reasons to distrust you.
Yeah.
Right? Like something's happened in the past, which I don't think we've ever talked about, but I was over that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I was over that. So I'm like, what is this? Right?
Yep.
And so when I started to feel this way, I started to question. But I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't know how to heal from it. I didn't know how to release it. I didn't know how to process it. It took a few times of you leaving and us getting into a big argument.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. Yeah.
And you and I were in the bedroom and we were yelling.
Yeah,
You were upset because I'm telling you like how I'm feeling, and you're responding you were pissed, like harsh. And I'm like, are you pissed off because you're doing it?
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of couples that are listening to this right now probably have gone through this, especially if there's some abandonment issues in the past, daddy issues, mommy issues.
You know what it is? You know what it is? It's that saying, or when people are like, well, if you're not doing anything, why are you getting so mad?
Exactly. And that's
you know what that does?
I was feeling.
It just pisses somebody off. It pisses the other person off even more.
But I mean, it's kind of, I wouldn't react the way you reacted though.
When we started kind of thinking about things, like in that moment, we've talked about it on here before, but in that very moment.
Well, what you told me when I was coming at you is like, what are you talking about? You're like, all I've ever wanted was a family. Why would I fuck this up?
And not only that, but you could tell that every time that I leave out of town, I would rather be home.
Right. You would always.
Because it's like a double-edged sword. It's one of these things. Like, yes, when I go out of town, it can be cool. It can be fun to go check out a new place and go sightseeing and, that kind of thing. But the people that know me know there's nothing more than I love than being with my family. You know what I mean?
Right. And
then when you were coming at me with that stuff, it was frustrating and pissing me off.
Right.
And
then I'm thinking to myself, like, why are you getting so pissed off if this isn't true? Right?
Yeah.
And right there and then, like in the heat of the moment, you guys, did we
start laughing?
After.
It wasn't funny right then.
Kid you not. It wasn't. I kid you not. I recognized right then that the issue wasn't with Miguel. The issue was with me and what happened in my childhood and feeling, abandoned when my mom and dad divorced, and my dad not being in my life. Like the one man who's supposed to love me unconditionally and be there for me, and just love me was not there. So if the one man that loved me that was supposed to be there is not there for you, then how can I trust you?
Right.
But that's it was all stemming from that. And it was such a weird moment. It was so weird because here I am, that came to me and I kind of smirked. I was like, what the? I smirked because I knew that I had the answer and I knew why I was feeling the way I was feeling. And immediately after, Miguel said,
I know why
you recognized.
I realized why I would get so angry. And it was because this is all I ever wanted. And
because as a child, Miguel was left home, alone often, from the previous podcast. If you guys are like, what are you guys talking about? Go to the previous podcast because we're sharing.
We're continuing on. Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, it was because I was left alone. It was because as a kid, you know, like I mentioned on the last one, I wanted that family matters family.
Right.
And that's why, like, you coming at me thinking that I'm off doing whatever when I don't even want to be out of town.
Right.
Like that, I was like, oh, it's because that's why it makes me so angry. Is because of how I was when I was a kid. It's because that's all I ever wanted.
And here you are telling me that yes.
And then I also saw, like, at the same time, the things that you were going through, and it's like, it all makes sense.
Right.
Like why we are the way we are.
And this is the thing, even though you and I had that experience together and we recognized each other's triggers and we know today what our triggers are, it's not like we are 100% free from it. I mean, it's today it's much easier, you know, because you just went on a trip not that long ago, and here this feeling, this nudge, right? This little negative thought tries to creep in, and I recognized it. And I shut it down.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Because I knew where it was coming from, and it had nothing to do with you, and it had to do with that little girl. So here I am. I go back into the healing process. I feel it. I accept it. And you know, I talk to my inner child and let her know that she's loved, that she's worthy, that she matters, and that did happen to her, but that's not where she's at today. It's taking responsibility of what I'm feeling, forgiving, because I already, you know, forgave my dad 100%, you know, and it's letting go, but it's so much faster. It's so much quicker. It was like a second. It was a second that the thought came in and it was gone and I was free. But that's the thing. Most people are not wanting to face those hard truths.
And you know what? I've mentioned it in the past, and maybe it kind of seems like I don't get those thoughts, but I have had those thoughts. But for me, just like you, and for me, it's been that way for a long time. Like, it's easier for me to kind of, like, I have the thought and it's like, you can't live like that.
Right.
I'm going to go crazy. If I'm going to start going down this path, and it's just going to drive me crazy. Right. But I have always, like, not always. I haven't had those thoughts in a long time. But when I did, that's kind of how I took it. You know, it's like, I can't, you would drive yourself insane if you see things that way. You know what I mean? Like, if that's your intention, there's nothing I'm going to do about it.
Right.
There's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah, because you are like, I don't know any man that is as secure as you are.
We've run into some situations, and it's not like I'm passive, because if I need to do something, I will. If I need to say something, I will. But I've always looked at it like, you're your own person. It comes with everything. Like, I've never wanted to force you to do anything that you didn't like. I'll suggest something and I'll say, hey, maybe we should do this. But whenever you ask me, hey, babe, what do you think about this? Should I do this? My answer is usually like, what do you think? Like, do you want to do it? You know, it's like, it's not up to me. It's up to you. You're your own person. So when something would come up with somebody else, I would be like, well, I trust you. I trust you. I know you. And that's between you and them. Yes, maybe I'm involved because we're together, but that's between you guys. And now, if you're trying to handle this situation and you're not having any success and it continues happening, then maybe I have to step in and say something or do something or whatever.
Right.
But until then, it's up to you. And it's never gotten past that point, because you are who you are. And if it starts lines start getting crossed, you handle it.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I don't have to worry about anything. I'm just like, you know what? You got it.
Right.
And that's the way I've been seeing it for a long time.
Yeah. And whenever I feel a certain way, I come to you.
Right.
You know, and I'm a way different person today than I was before I met you.
Yeah.
Because I was not that open, loving. I mean, I always was a good person. Like, I always treated my exes I always was lovable. right? Like their moms, their families always loved me because I always left them better than what I got them.
Yeah.
You know, but I never allowed myself 100% to fall in love. And I've always gotten to relationships where they loved me more. And that's where I was avoiding, being in a situation where I could get hurt.
Yeah.
I avoided it 100%.
I infiltrated like a terrorist.
Stupid.
But yeah, go ahead.
Just, recognizing that I had that situation, the abandonment issue, and reflecting on it, because I never really thought that I had daddy issues. Like never, right? I just thought it is what it is and I'm fine.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
You've heard me say that before.
Yeah, it is what
like,
it is. I say that all the time.
My dad is who he is and I am who I am. And, something happens, but it's not going to affect me.
Yeah.
But then it was a lie. It was a lie that I told myself. It was a lie to protect my heart. It was a lie to protect me. Because once I started to recognize the issue, I realized that I was hurt, that I did need to forgive my dad, that I need to have a tough, a real conversation with him. And once I started going through the self-processing and the healing, I did make a call to him. I did take him out to eat. I did have these conversations with him.
Okay.
And I realized that it wasn't him abandoning me. There's so much that was going on within. That.
So for a lot of people that have something like that,
mm-hmm.
I want to know, do you think that it's necessary to do that? Or could somebody have these thoughts, have these feelings, understand them, process them, and move on?
I can't answer that.
But before you
question.
answer that, thanks a lot.
Because, hold on. Don't cut me off right now. Nope.
Before you do that, make sure you guys go to oppositesattractpodcast.com. Share it with the people that you know. We've been getting into some deep shit on this one. But yeah, you guys can share it with the people that you know. When you go to our website, you can follow our social media there. You can watch the podcast there. You can listen to it there. And you'll also see our support the show links. When you click on the support the show tab, or if you're on your phone and you hit the menu button, you'll see the support the show tab. You can click on that and it'll take you to our Amazon link. Anything that you purchase through that link doesn't cost you anything extra, so you can just do your regular Amazon shopping. Just click on that first and it'll help out the show. And also, while you're on Amazon, if you want to pick up one of our t-shirts, pop sockets, phone cases, you just got to search Opposites Attract Podcast on Amazon and it should pull some of that stuff up. And it'll also help out the show. And when you click on that support the show tab, it'll also show you Trust Inc. And Trust Inc. is?
We are a nationwide mobile notary and signing agency. So if you're in the process of selling, refinancing, or purchasing, you can request Trust Inc. to be your signing agency.
And you can go to Trust Inc. directly by going to trustinkusa.com. We're also affiliates with Pinwheel, which is the best smartphone available out there for kids. All the apps that they have available on that phone are picked by parents, by counselors, by therapists, people that really want kids to do well, that have their best interest in mind. Mm-hmm. All the apps are apps that do not suck their attention. It's not something that they're going to get addicted to. It's not the games where you level up and get the next color, get the next mask, get the next skin, get the next, and it just keeps them freaking on there for hours at a time. They don't allow any of that stuff. The only apps that are on there are things that are going to make kids more productive, tools that'll teach them things that are useful. And you also have access to call logs. You have access to their text messages and their GPS tracking. And also it's a phone that they can grow with. Yes. They have apps for little kids and it grows with them up to teenagers. So if you guys would like 10% off of a Pinwheel phone, you can use promo code OAPTEN all together, all in caps on pinwheel.com.
Take a breather. And if you would like to buy us a bottle of wine, you can go
a bottle. Sonja's upgrading. Or a cup of coffee for me. Cup of coffee for me. Bottle of wine for Sonia.
You can go to buymeacoffee.com.
patreon.com/opposite pod. And and what that is a way for you guys to buy us a virtual coffee. Like we've mentioned, if we met you at the bar or at the coffee shop or whatever, we'd love to buy you a coffee and get to know you a little bit. And if you guys would like to do that for us, you can do it there at buymeacoffee.com/opposite pod. So
to answer your question,
what do you think? So does somebody, like, if you're going through that processing of some things that you went through in the past, is it necessary to go kind of like, I think you hear that also in AA or something, like when you've wronged somebody,
it's like, I'm just saying,
I mean, if you watch movies, I've been to AA. Well, I can talk about that. I was forced to
on
go.
Another podcast.
I was forced by the military to do that.
Go.
But anyway, like when you do that, you hear that it's necessary to go to the people that you've hurt or that have wronged you or whatever and ask for, you know what? Now that's a little bit different. I guess that's if you've hurt somebody else. You have to go and ask for forgiveness, and whether they accept it or not, that's on them, but you did your part. But when somebody hurts you, or somebody does, or it's the other way around, is it necessary? Like if you think about it and process it, do you have to go back to that person?
So I can only speak from my own experience. So I don't know you. I don't know everybody else. So I can tell you from my own experience that to break free from what I was going through, from what I was feeling, I knew that I had to, forgive my dad. And that's with anybody, and it's almost a selfish act, because you know that once you free them, once you forgive them, then you are free. And so for me personally, I would say yes, but I don't know how everybody works. I only know how I work, and that's what I did, and that's what helped me. And that's with everybody.
Now, when you did it, was it like a confrontation?
Not at all. I remember my dad and I went to lunch, and him and I were talking. And the thing of it is that we can judge our parents all day long. We can judge them all day long and tell them, you didn't do this right, or you did that, or you left me, or you abandoned me, and you did this.
Yeah.
But you don't know, which doesn't give them the right.
Yeah, it still doesn't make it right.
But you don't know what they gone through as a child unless you've really talked to them. And so for me, getting to know my dad and my mom on a deeper level got me to understand them more. And nobody's perfect. And a lot of times when we go through some tough situations as children, we will follow the path or we'll go the total opposite path.
Yeah.
And so I have learned that to forgive is not for the person just sitting in front of you, but it's for you.
Yeah.
And it's worked for me in many situations. And so I can't speak for everyone, but I can only speak for myself.
Yeah.
And it has helped 100%. Like every little bit of hurt and disappointment that I felt, abandonment from my dad, does not exist anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I love him 100%, and I see him for who he is and what he's gone through.
Yeah, because that's the thing, is that there's a lot of things that we don't, you think you know, but if you really think about it, like, how much do you know about your parents?
Exactly.
Like them before us.
Right.
We really don't know much.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. So when I did that with my dad, I started talking to my mom, and I started asking her questions about her as a child and things that she's witnessed and things that she's gone through. And she went through some things.
Well, it's kind of
that I was unaware of.
Like kind of like you were saying before, like it doesn't make it okay, but it may shed some light.
Right.
Or give you some insight to why they are the way they are.
Right.
It may not make it okay, but it's like, yeah, I guess I could get that. I see why. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because if you look at our patterns, when you and I first became parents, when we had my niece and my nephews, we were parenting the way our parents parented.
Yes.
And it was so...
And some things were not right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we've apologized to them for it.
Right. Yeah.
You know, but what's so awesome is, you know, anyways, that's a different subject. But, you know, they're like, you did the... That's what she said. That's what Nikki said. You did the best that you could with what you knew. And she's appreciative of it, you know?
Yeah. And we love you guys.
Yes, yes.
Very much.
So, you know, this whole podcast here is really to help you guys to wake up, to be present, to be aware, to take some time for you to look back. And even if you don't remember your childhood the way I did, if you sit and really get yourself to go back. I did it through meditation. I went and got a picture of me when I was a 7-year-old. I talked to that 7-year-old. You know, I still have the picture up on my wall, you know, and I talk to her and I tell her that she's loved, that she matters, and that whatever happened to her, she did not deserve, and
it's not her fault.
Healing that inner child. And with that, so much has come to me. I started remembering things. You got to witness some of that.
But it's also forgiving yourself for some of the fucked up things that are within you.
Yes.
And it's like, hey, look at what you went through.
Right. You know, and I know that it's so easy.
Not that it makes it okay.
Right.
Like we just said, but there's a reason for it.
I know that it's so easy to avoid, because that's a safety mechanism, just to avoid it all, to not face. And you think that if you don't think about it, that you'll forget about it. And that's not the way it works, because it comes out in different ways. No. And for me, it was with you and my insecurities. Once you started to leave for work out of state, and I started to have these feelings that did not feel very good. And I knew that I'm like, this is not you.
Yeah.
Like you're a very secure woman. Like, this is not you. Like, what is this that you're feeling? And I started praying, and I'm like thinking that, you know, the enemy is coming in to try to tear apart our marriage, right? Because I was very religious at that point, and I was blaming the enemy, and I'm like, the enemy's coming in and wanting to destroy my marriage, and I got to release this, because this is not love, this is not light, therefore it's not God. So I need to pray, I need to get down on my knees and release what it is that I'm feeling. Though that did help for another situation, but for this one, it was more than that. It wasn't the enemy, it was the enemy from within.
Yeah.
It was me having to go back to dig up my childhood, to figure out, where is this coming from? Where is this coming from? Sitting in it, not ignoring it, but sitting in it and questioning and journaling and speaking it out loud to you and letting you know. And it took a lot of courage for me to actually voice to you what I was feeling.
Yeah.
Because if I'm voicing my insecurities, well, that's not what strong women do. Do you understand? Like, you know, so it took a lot for me to even openly share with you what I was feeling. Yeah. It took vulnerability. It took strength for me to speak to you and to talk to you about this insecurity, this lack of confidence, this, you know.
And that is a sign of strength. The vulnerability is a sign. I mean, it's kind of separate, but it reminds me of a leadership principle where when you don't know something, you say it and you let your people know. I don't know. Does anybody else know? But a lot of people feel that it's going to make them look weak, that they're not supposed to be the leader because they don't know.
Right.
But they don't realize that it's a sign of strength to let people know, like, hey, I'm being honest with you. I don't know.
And it's taking responsibility, right? It's taking responsibility. I wasn't looking for validation.
Yeah.
Well, it was taking responsibility for what it was that I was feeling and not blaming you for what I was feeling. And taking ownership and responsibility and really trying to figure out where this was coming from.
Yeah.
And then processing it all and trying to figure out, how do I heal from this?
Yeah. And I think, one thing, I was just kind of like, when we came back from the ads and stuff, and I was just like, is that something that's necessary? And like, I don't know, maybe you changed my mind, but like, I've always thought, and I've told you, like, I have thought about these things. I've processed them, but I don't feel like I need to go back. And it's like, hey, like, I know what it is. I know, like, yeah, I've gone through from step A to where we are today. I know what it is. And it's not on me to mend this relationship or do whatever, but kind of like what we were talking about. It doesn't make it okay, but there may be a reason for it. And we don't know, because a lot of times we don't know our parents as well as we think we do.
Right.
Especially the part before us. Like, that's a whole, it's kind of like when you think about, like, I've talked to you about it before, our brothers and sisters. Like, how these are the people that we are almost the closest to. But when you really think about it, they live different lives than we lived. Completely different.
Right.
I mean, at least for us. Maybe for our kids it's a little bit different. But for us, you look at my brothers and sisters, every single one of us lived a completely different life. I grew up in a different time than they did.
Right.
Some of them, they grew up with me for a period of time, then they grew up in their own life. You know what I mean? So our parents probably went through all kinds of shit like that happened way before us, and we have no clue about that. And that all adds up to the person that they were. So maybe, just learning more about that and giving them the benefit of the doubt, I guess.
So the podcast, because you mentioned earlier that maybe how this all, like the healing process, the podcast has something to do with it. And I agree that it does have something to do with it, because the more you talk about and you share what it is that you've gone through, the faster you heal.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to hold you back anymore. It's not going to be something. It's not a secret anymore. I mean, we're letting the world know about how fucked up we are.
Right.
Yeah.
So
it is part of the healing process, because we are facing our truth.
Yeah.
And not only are we facing it, but we're also giving advice on how we were actually able to heal from our process. And it all stems from slowing down, being mindful, being aware of our thoughts, because your thoughts create your feelings and your feelings create your actions, right? Because my thought that day when you were leaving out of town, is like, well, he's leaving out of town. I wonder who he's going with. And then the feeling of insecurity, jealousy, the lack of confidence, all of that. And my action was to make a video call. I want to see if you're alone.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And that's why it's like, if you are so busy, if you can't stand to be alone with your own thoughts, you need to question that.
That's a sign.
That is a sign.
If you always need something to entertain you, if there's any moment of downtime and it's like, what's happening on Facebook, what's happening on Instagram, what's happening on YouTube, there may be a reason for that.
Right.
And the thing is that I think everybody kind of knows that subconsciously, but it's just easier.
Right.
And one thing that I was talking to our kids about, and something that has kind of served us, not just with these things, but with a lot of other things, is accepting responsibility.
Yes.
Because no matter, this is something that we teach our kids. I was just talking to Audrey about this the other day. There are times, like, just get into the habit of accepting responsibility for everything. Doesn't matter what it is. Whether you feel like it may not be your fault, take responsibility for it. If it's a situation where something got messed up, take responsibility, because the moment that you try to place blame, you have no power at that moment. Because if it was the reason I am the way I am is because my dad did this,
exactly,
or my mom did this,
exactly,
or my grandmother did this, or
right,
or it's because I grew up like this,
right?
Well, then what the fuck am I supposed to do about that? There's
right.
nothing I can do.
Nope.
My dad's got to come and fix it.
Yep.
My mom's got to come and fix it.
Right.
Somebody's got to come and fix
yep.
it from my neighborhood. Yep. But if I take responsibility, like, yes, I know what that is.
Yep. That happened to me, but
these are my thoughts.
Yep.
I know what happened.
Right.
I'm going to take responsibility for what happened, yep. and I'm going to change things going forward.
And you're going to work through it. Yes. Yes. Yes.
That's how you can change things.
That's part of healing.
And I'm not talking about just with this. I'm talking about with life, with work. Mm-hmm. When you ask somebody to do something, or something goes wrong and it's not done right, or whatever the case is, and you're like, well, so-and-so, I told so-and-so and they didn't, and this and that. Well, maybe next time you need to explain it in a different way. Or now you know that person, and maybe you need to make sure and verify, or whatever the case is. But when you take responsibility, you can make a change and you can make a difference. But whenever you start blaming other people, you can't do anything about it.
Right. It's not playing the victim role.
Exactly.
You know, and taking responsibility. And I want it, just in case, you know, someone's listening and you're like, you know, how do you know if you're being triggered, or, what is a trigger? With me, when you had left and I started to feel a certain way and it wasn't a good feeling, I knew that there was something there, right?
Yeah.
I knew that there was something there. And so I had looked up, like, you know, most triggers are clues of letting you know where the hurt is, you know? So if you feel yourself getting upset or feeling angry, or, you know, you're having an argument with your loved one and he says something, and whatever it is that he said, you just snap, there's something there.
It was like when we were upstairs in that moment that we were talking about a little bit earlier. That's what I thought in that moment. I was like, why am I getting so angry? Mm-hmm. And that's when I was like, okay. It's because of this. Yep. It's because of my past. It's because, you know,
right.
But it's thinking about, like, the trigger came and it's like, why am I feeling like this?
Right.
You know?
So how much time do we have left?
We're good. We got a few minutes.
So in the previous podcast, you had talked about growing up with your dad and witnessing abuse.
Yeah.
And that is not something I've ever had to worry about with you. Like, I would have never known that until you expressed it.
Yeah.
You know, because most kids that witness abuse follow that same pattern.
Yeah.
Why do you feel that you went the total opposite route? And did you have any situations, maybe in prior relationships, where you felt?
Yeah. So I think, well, as far as why it turned out different, you know, like, kind of, we talked about on the last episode, when you're people that are abused, people that are molested, sometimes molest,
become the perpetrator.
You know, and it's not, I'm not saying everybody, but a lot of times you hear that's, you know, so-and-so is a pedophile. Well, they were molested as a kid. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's tough, because being a pedophile is never, like, that's like the worst shit ever. But at the same time, like, when you find out that person was also molested, it's like, it doesn't make it okay.
Right. But you understand. You have empathy. You can empathize.
So I don't know if it was like, kind of like we were talking about last week, like the positive attitude that we've seemed to kind of always have. And also my dad telling me, you don't hit women. And I took that very serious. And I knew, like, when I was a kid, obviously I didn't Like it was one of the hardest things that I had to deal with. Mm-hmm. And I never wanted to put somebody else through that. And from what my dad told me, but so I don't know exactly why I didn't continue it, but that
it's like I think you knew within that it was not the right thing. Yeah. Right.
But I did have my own instance of that with my ex. And it got to the point where, so we had a situation where she started, coming at me and hitting me, trying to, well, the thing is, I'm not going to get my ass beat. Like that, it's just not going to happen. But I'm also not going to start swinging either. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, and I have a temper, and I had a temper back then too. But I knew inside that I was getting close to a breaking point. And at that point, I called the police because I was like, I know I'm close to losing control. And if I lose control, it's going to be bad. But I just, in my mind, it's always been there. It's always been there. And
it's so weird how it's, because, I'm familiar with the story, and knowing what you've been through as a child, it took, for me, just looking, on the outside looking in, it had to take, it was a lot for you to take in and at a split second make that right decision.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if I should just explain what happened, but it was at the end of our relationship, and I was trying to get my stuff. Like we were done. It was just we put up with a lot of bad shit. I put up with a lot of bad shit. We both did. We weren't very good to each other, just how the relationship ended up turning out. Especially at the end, it was like I didn't really give a fuck, and she didn't either. And it got to a point where I was like, you know what? This is it. I can't do this anymore because I know where this is going. Like if I keep sticking around this, I might fucking snap and do something that I might regret. And and at that point, it's done. There was no going back now. So I was like, you know what? I want my shit and I want out. Yeah. And when I was trying to get my stuff, she wasn't allowing me. And then I wanted to get my things out, and she was blocking me, and I was like,
it just became physical.
It started not on my part. I was like, well, you can't leave. Like I'm also a free person. Like I'm not gonna get fucked over and taken advantage of. So I'm like, look, I'm done. I want to be done, and I have that right. Let me get my shit and let me get out. Mm-hmm. And it was like, no, it was the control, and I'm like, I'm not gonna be fucking controlled anymore. It's over. So at that point, I'm like, you're not leaving until I get my stuff. And it wasn't that I was grabbing or hitting or doing anything. It was just like, I'm blocking your exit. And you can't leave until I leave, until I get my stuff. And then I'll leave and you can go on with your life, period. But because that wasn't how they wanted it to go, they started getting physical with me. And it's like, well, I'm leaving whether you like, whatever. She started getting physical with me. And it wasn't like, it was like, you're going to do what I want pretty much. And I'm like, you're not leaving. So then she started taking swings at me, and I'm moving out of the way. She scratched me a couple times, hit me a couple times, tried to hit me in the nuts, tried to throw me down the stairs. And at a certain point, I started feeling like the rage.
Yes.
And I don't know how, but like I must have got away from the situation or whatever. And I remember specifically thinking, you need to call the cops. You need to call the cops because I need to call the cops for her protection. Like fucking literally. Because if they don't show, I think I told them, like, you guys need to get here fast because things are going to get out of hand.
Yeah.
And they ended up showing up. And
so when we got into a relationship, because I remember, I mean, this is going to probably roll over into the next podcast, but you went through a very ugly relationship prior to you and I meeting.
Yeah.
And so I always, and you've heard me say this before, like before I feel that, and this is a different podcast, but before anyone gets into a new relationship, they need to heal from the previous relationship. Because if not, you're going to bring all that baggage into the new relationship.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why at the beginning of our relationship, you were a bit of, when you moved in,
yeah,
you know, I saw the asshole in you.
Yeah. Asshole.
You asshole.
But no, I've told you, like, I remember one time, I don't remember the specific situation that it was, but I remember having the thought. But I remember because of the relationship that I was in the past and all the things that I had gone through, I remember when the relationship was over, I had one thought. I was like, that is the last time that I will ever be disrespected like that again. Like, I am not going to tolerate that fucking bullshit from anyone. But when you go through something like that, I think sometimes maybe you tend to overcorrect a little bit. And I don't know what the situation was, but I think I remember in the beginning of our relationship, something happened or whatever. Maybe you said something and I took it a certain way. And at the same time, you know, maybe it was a trigger from my past. Maybe it was a trigger from your past that made you say something.
Yeah.
But
well, I was way different back then than I am today.
We both were.
Right.
But in that moment, I fucking snapped at you. But I recognized that it was too much. It was overboard for whatever it was. And I was like, why did I fucking snap so much? Like, so hard? Why was it so extreme? And I realized that it was because of my previous relationship. And I thought to myself, like, literally the thought was, you're a good girl. At that time, I was like, you're a good girl.
Oh, you call me a girl.
Now she's a dirty girl. No, I'm just...
What the hell? Which is still a good girl.
It's still a good girl. It's like a subcategory of a good girl. It's a dirty girl. But no.
Oh my God.
No, but I was like, she's a good girl. And she doesn't deserve this. That wasn't her. She doesn't deserve to be treated like that. And I think that was it. I think really, like, from that, like, I really thought about it. And before I would snap or whatever, like, for that reason, I was just like, that's coming from somewhere else.
Right. See, but most people, that's not. It's just they continue living on without even realizing that all the past from their past is affecting the relationship that they're in.
Your current partner is not your ex.
Right.
They're not.
And whatever your ex did has nothing to do with this individual that you're with today. So a lot of times you could lose a good thing, and you almost lost a good thing.
Yeah.
You know, because of it. You know, so there's so much when it comes to relationships. There's so much that you have to work through, work on, and to get to the core of your soul or your spirit. Shut up.
Yeah.
It's just an ongoing process, and it is work. But if you do the work,
peeling back the layers of the onion.
Yep. If you do the work, you will live such a happy life.
It's worth it.
It is 100%. Like, there's nothing that I would change today because of where I am today and where, like, there's nothing, everything that we've gone through, all the stressors, all the, just everything.
I think the bottom line is, though, you have to take that responsibility. No matter what happened, you have to take that responsibility. Because even if it's not your fault, like the things that we talked about today, a lot of them are not our fault. But we are the way we are because of those things. And I take responsibility for the way I am.
Right.
It's not taking responsibility for what happened. It's taking responsibility for why I am how I am. And I need to work on those things. Right. You know, it's not like I have to wait for my dad to come and fix these things, or wait for my mom, or wait for my neighborhood, or whatever the trauma was. No, I take responsibility for who I am. I know that it's because of this, but it's my job to fix it.
Right. You got to do the homework. You got to do the work.
Right.
Like, you have to do the work, no matter how hard, no matter how much you feel that you don't want to go back. You have to heal that inner child. Because if you don't heal that inner child, it's like a generational curse.
Yeah.
Right? If you don't resolve it, if you don't work on it, guess what? You're going to pass that along to your children. And then your children are going to have to deal with it. And if their children don't deal with it, then their children are going to have to deal with it. And I think with you and I, we made that decision as soon as we found out we were pregnant, or I was pregnant. You know, we were going to do.
I like to think we were pregnant.
That we were going to do whatever was in our power to be the best parents.
To change things.
You know, the poverty mindset, all of it. We're breaking those chains. And if it's going to happen, it might as well happen with us. With us being first in line.
Yep.
You know? Because if it's, what's that saying?
If it is to be,
it's up to me.
And with that, thank you guys for being with us. Thank you for listening to Opposites Attract Podcast. Make sure you guys go to our website, oppositesattractpodcast.com. Follow us, share it with the people that you know. Download our resource list, which is a list of things that have helped us out in the past, things that have kind of changed our mindset on the way we see things when it comes to parenting, when it comes to marriage, when it comes to money, when it comes to all of those things in parenting, in marriage, you know, so it's things that have really helped us out. Books, podcasts, videos, and you can get that by going to our website. You just wait a second and the pop-up will come up. You put in your name and your email and you'll be able to download that resource list. You got anything before we go, babe?
And if you have any questions or comments or things that you would like to share with us that maybe we can grow from, we would
that phone number doesn't work.
Love to hear from you guys.
So you guys can find us at Opposite Pod everywhere. You can send us a message on Facebook, Instagram, everywhere. Just send us a message. We'll get it. And we'll have a new number for... Oh, wait, no. That is the new number.
Oh,
I changed it. I forgot.
Yes, a fire.
The new number for you guys to leave us a message is 480-331-9846.
Well,
we had to change a couple things around, but you guys can leave us a message there and we will play it on the show.
So thank you guys for your love, for your support, and for watching Opposites Attract Podcast.
Where we get better
together. Bye.